You're listening to the Intuitively Intermittent podcast. Whether this is your first time joining me or your 100th, thank you for being here and being a part of this important conversation. In June 2018, I was tired of being asked by the intuitive eating groups to take my conversations about intermittent fasting elsewhere. At the same time, the conversation in the intermittent fasting community wasn't addressing the emotional and spiritual needs of my IF lifestyle. Before I knew it, the Intuitively Intermittent Facebook group was up and running, and I started this podcast. I am super excited to bring you the personal stories of folks who are combining intuitive eating and intermittent fasting successfully and really creating lives that bring them joy and meaning. This episode is sponsored by the Dream and Drive Diet Program Study Group. This free study group will start on Sunday, July 8th, 2018, and run for 6 weeks. In a dedicated private Facebook group, we will discuss and share with one another as we work through Dr. Kelley's book together. We have space for just 9 more people at the time of this recording. As you'll hear in this interview, Dr. Kelley's focus is really on intuitive living, and this study group would be a great personal development opportunity, regardless if you have any interest in intermittent fasting. If you would like to learn a bit more or are ready to sign up, go to tinyurl.com/dreamdrivestudy to purchase the book and request to join the private group. Again, that's tinyurl.com/dreamdrivestudy. The group will be capped at 20 participants, so act fast. And now, here's the episode you've been waiting for. Hello?
Hello.
Awesome. Hi guys, Andrea here, and I am here with Dr. Kelley, and I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
Kacergis.
And she is the author of the Dream and Drive Diet Program, Life in the Fast Lane, Intermittent Fasting, Intuitive Eating. And she and I are going to chat about how that program and that book came to be. And so Dr. Kelley, before we started recording, you started to tell me a little bit of your history. So I guess why don't you start? You know, you've been an intuitive eater your whole life, and then what happened?
Yes. So since I was young, I've always been an intuitive eater, and it always baffled me why anybody else would have that authority over our life to tell us what to eat, when to eat, or how to eat. So, just growing up as a young child, I noticed at age 6 that every time I opened up a bread bag, it would make me really nauseous and sick. And my mom was a nurse, and she would be saying, what's wrong with you? And to me, I always just felt that peace within me that I had a guidance system and that my body didn't like it. And, that was way before food intolerances. So by the time the 1990s came, I realized that I really wanted to start teaching this to people, because all around me, I would watch people, go through different diets and fail. And starting in 1991, I started teaching aerobics and managing an all-women's fitness center. And I noticed that when the women came in, they were on particular diets. So when I would sit down to write them their personal training program, I would ask them, do you really enjoy that diet? And many of them said, no, I don't even like that food, or I don't even like eating at this time, or I don't even understand, why I'm doing this. So then I would really just teach them that they had a guidance system, and that when they followed it, they would feel better in all aspects of their life. And I became very successful at doing that.
Okay. And so then how did you go from teaching it in the training setting, the intuitive eating piece? Like, what was the next step in your career that ultimately led you, to where you are today? So at some point you went to medical school?
Yes. I went to chiropractic school in the late 1990s. So I taught aerobics for a long time, and I managed an all-women's fitness center, like I said. And then I was just getting bored. I've always been, since I was a young girl, very fascinated with this sense of having a guidance system, as well as the human body and how it functions. So I figured that reading Tufts medical journals and reading my mother's nursing manual, that I would really find out in there where we could figure out where this guidance system was. Because I knew that when I followed mine and when I talked to other people about listening to their gut, they'd always feel better with food and with all these life choices. So I decided, okay, well, let's go ahead and go to the ultimate type of schooling and let's become a doctor.
Sure.
So I was never really into traditional medicine. Growing up in that genre. So I figured me and my sister, we went to chiropractic school together. So as I was going through chiropractic school, I couldn't get pregnant, and I learned this other type of technique that I practice, and it's functional medicine.
Okay.
So it would actually teach you how to uncover any mental and emotional causes of diseases, any imprints in your body. And what I found is it was all based on intuition.
Okay.
So at that time in the late 1990s, I was deciding what path I wanted to take. I always knew that we had a guidance system. And I was finding at that point in time when I was teaching intuitive eating, I couldn't separate intuitive eating from intuitive living.
Okay.
Because I determined that the key to health and healing is creating a life you love. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so as part of you, so you were at chiropractic school, you were studying the functional medicine, and so then when you got out of your training, like, did you immediately start teaching people the intuitive eating stuff again? I know from some of what I've read, you did end up getting like formally trained in the intuitive eating, like a certified intuitive eating coach, because there's of course the book that talks all about that. And so at some point you went through that formal training.
Yes. So I started teaching intuitive eating, and I wanted to have more structure because, trying to teach people to tap into their guidance system and listen to it is such a vast subject because it's so individual and it's a day-to-day thing, right?
Sure.
So I figured, okay, well, if I get certified in intuitive eating, boom, I'm done, right? So 2009, I took the course and I got certified as a certified intuitive eating counselor. And that's when I learned all the 10 principles of intuitive eating. And I was like, wow, this is fantastic. So then I would teach classes to my patients in my home and teach them with either 6 weeks or 10 weeks. It just depends on like what I just could read the people, how long they needed. And we would go through these classes teaching just like those 10 principles. But then, and a lot of that is journaling and getting to know yourself and doing the hunger scale and rejecting the diet mentality. But what I found is people wanted daily work.
Oh,
so I was like, well, okay. I thought I had it. I'm a chiropractor on one end doing functional medicine. And in there, I just want to explain what I do. When somebody comes into my office, I'll go through all their organs and all their systems and all their energy centers and figure out where they have imbalances. So say somebody's liver is off. It could be physical, something could be damaged to the liver. It could be chemical, something they're eating or a toxin, maybe some mold in their environment. Or it could be mental and emotional, an old imprint of anger, frustration, or resentment being stuck in there. So imagine I have one practice where I'm uncovering any imprints in somebody's body, and then I'm teaching intuitive eating. And I was like, I have to marry these two worlds. I have to marry personal development, how to get people in their driver's seat and create a life they love, because they have this dis-ease in their body.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. In fact, in the Facebook group, which is the Intuitively Intermittent Facebook group, it had come up that I was like, I had a sort of a tenderness in my abdomen, and something that you had said, you had asked me if it was like large intestine or small intestine, and just based on the positioning, I figured it was small intestine stuff. And you listed off these potential things that could be contributing to it. And one of them was, I don't remember the specifics, but it was all about things being out of alignment. And that was like, honestly, the tenderness in my small intestine area ended up getting better. Like once I created the Facebook group, and like all of a sudden I had this outlet to do the sort of support networking, all this stuff around marrying the intermittent fasting and intuitive eating. And the issues that I was having basically went away. Like I haven't had any issues really since the group started. So I was just like blown away by how something as simple as but I mean, it's not simple, but like something that I was wrestling with could actually have been causing the issues that I was experiencing.
Yeah. In my practice, I specialize in autoimmune diseases, food intolerances, weight issues, and also the mental and emotional components that are stuck in our body. Because we're only as sick as our secrets. Or I find a lot of people along this journey, people wouldn't lose weight, not because what they were eating, but because what was eating them. And so, don't you believe that many people try to lose weight because they want to make a change in their life? But the easiest thing to do is start with how they look.
Yeah.
And they're not brave enough to move beyond that. Or when they lose weight, they want to make a change in their life, but they're not brave enough. So they gain the weight back, right?
Yeah.
That's what I found teaching women for all these years. And I say women because I deal mostly with women.
Okay.
But what I realized was we can't separate intuitive eating from intuitive living. So I had to create a book that would incorporate both of them. So it's kind of like intuitive eating and a personal development program.
Okay.
And I just want to say in the book, I do have a chapter on the mental and emotional components of all the different body parts and what they mean. Yeah. And then what right side of the body means and left side of the body means. So if they're in a place where they have pain, which is an indicator, it's a very good thing to have pain in your life because it's an indicator that something needs attention. So you had some indicator in the small intestines. You couldn't figure something out. Things weren't working for you. You knew that you wanted to make a change, but you didn't know how to put your finger on it. But once you did that, that dis-ease went away. Mm-hmm. So that's in the book. Inside the Dream and Drive Diet book, I have a whole chapter on that.
Well, I'm really looking forward to exploring that a little bit more for sure, because I think it's definitely interesting. And so I'm interested in, I guess, where did the intermittent fasting piece come into this for you? Because the really cool thing about your book is that it's combining intuitive eating and intermittent fasting. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started on that journey? Like, even, I know you mentioned 2009 for the intuitive eating certification. So where did the intermittent fasting piece come into this for you?
Okay, so being a natural intuitive eater, I never really wanted to eat breakfast. And luckily in my household, there were no food rules. It was like a free-for-all. Eat when you want, stop when you feel like it, thank God for that. So, yeah. By the time 2009, and I'm teaching intuitive eating, can you imagine that, for about 9 or 10 years now, I've been teaching this, and some people wouldn't want to eat breakfast. And I'd be like, okay, listen to your body, right? And many people would find that when they really tap into their hunger, many weren't hungry till I would say 10 or 11. And that seemed to be pretty much people's averages. So I loved going on that food journey with them and really helping them determine what was physical hunger, what was mental and emotional hunger. And for myself, I never really got hungry until later in the afternoon. Anyways, so I was reading an article about 2013, 2014 from Dr. Mercola, and I was reading it, and it said some people skip breakfast, and that's called intermittent fasting. And I was like, oh my God, this is a thing. Like intuitive eating is a thing. Intermittent fasting is a thing. And the more I started to learn the power of intermittent fasting, decreased inflammation, decreased allergy symptoms, increased human growth hormone, stubborn weight, just getting more in touch with your guidance system. I said, wow, I have food intolerances. Being an intuitive eater, I knew how foods made me feel.
Sure.
Check. Then teaching this in practice in functional medicine, I could test myself to see what foods bothered me, and those coincided. So I thought, maybe if I practice intermittent fasting, I can overcome my food intolerances. And I did.
That's awesome. So prior to learning about intermittent fasting, it sounds like you were already skipping breakfast, but can you tell me, from what you've said, it sounds like you were following some sort of an intermittent fasting protocol prior to actually really doing intermittent fasting, but what did it look like before you had a word for what you were doing versus after you heard formally about intermittent fasting? Like how did it start, and then where did it end up?
Okay, so for me, listening to my guidance system, I was never hungry till about maybe between 11 and 1, depending on my activity for the day. Okay. So I just never would eat.
What time were you doing the dinner the night before?
It just depended on my schedule. Maybe 7 o'clock.
Okay. So I guess how my math this early in the morning is a little bit challenged. So that's what, like 16 hours roughly?
That'd probably be about right.
Okay.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be hungry till about then, and then and be I was very mindful of what is physical hunger, what's mental and emotional hunger. So I really only ate when I was physically hungry. So I would eat, between 11 and 1, depending on the day, depending on my activity. And then I noticed that I wouldn't get hungry for hours later. And then when I did, I just would eat a small meal and I felt absolutely fantastic. So I really was doing two meals a
Okay.
day for a
Yeah.
long time, not even knowing that it was a thing.
Yeah. And so then you read about intermittent fasting and you started to think that it might fix some of your food intolerances. What was that process like for you? Like,
Okay, so I study a lot about gut health.
okay.
And I understand the human digestive system. And so when I was reading the information and the research on intermittent fasting, my guidance system told me, Kelley, you're onto something here. I always knew I had food intolerances. However, I also have Hashimoto's thyroiditis.
Okay.
Now, the emotions that go with Hashimoto's thyroiditis is, what about me? When's it my turn? How do I fit in? So you had made a post, Andrea, about how back in your blog about bright line eating or something.
Yeah.
And you said that it was very discouraging to bring your own food to potlucks and other places, right?
Yeah.
So my guidance system always told me that there was something I could do to overcome my food intolerances. I was messing up my thyroid when I couldn't have those foods because I felt left out.
Oh.
So while my physical body felt better not eating wheat, corn, potatoes, or yeast, I couldn't get past the mental and emotional components of disease because I felt left out. Now, some people, when they come to me and they figure out what food intolerances they have no issues. Fine, I just wanted to know that. And for the rest of their life, they avoid it. All well and good. That wasn't my life purpose.
Yeah.
So I found intermittent fasting and realized that if I could clean up my gut, I could possibly clean up my food intolerances.
Okay.
And that's the journey I went on. So looking at all the science of intermittent fasting and some of the things I knew about it, when I started practicing it myself, my guidance system was leading me to shorter and shorter fasts so that I could overcome those intolerances. Does that make sense?
Shorter and shorter
eating windows.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I apologize. You're right.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, shorter and shorter eating windows, so a longer fast.
Okay. And then at what point did your guidance system just sort of help you realize that your food intolerances were going away? Like, how did that?
Yeah, this is a great question. Because in the group, we always struggle with, well, how do I choose a window? And is that intuitive, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was intuitive. The longer I went, the more I found that if I purposely was A, wanting a food, and B, ate it, the shorter amount of eating window I had, I wouldn't have the symptoms. So this was a long process for me. It took me about 9 months of daily, okay, I'm really wanting this food, so I'm craving it. It feels like this is what I want. And then I had a short eating window, so a longer fast, and I would say, all right, you know what? I think I'm going to try this. I would try it. And then I got to the point where every single one of my food intolerances give me no more symptoms. And, some people might not think that's a big deal, but I had bloating, I had joint pain, I had inflammation, I had skin rashes, my lungs would close up and get congested where I had to take a bronchial dilator. I had mood swings. Every time I would eat corn syrup, my patients would come in and I'm like, hi, how are you today? And they're like, did you have corn syrup? I'm like, yes, get on the table. My patients, I love my patients, but they just know, right? But, so for me, intermittent fasting was intuitive.
Okay.
And that's why I love helping people navigate that to figure out their perfect window. Because some people's perfect window is 16-8. They might not have food intolerances. They might not, they might just want to feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, part of the history of starting the group, which I know you're familiar with, is that I was really like I was getting kicked out of intuitive eating groups, like support groups, because I was talking about intermittent fasting. And they're like, you can't possibly be listening to your hunger. You can't possibly be intuitive and not, and going for some eating fasting window of like 16 hours. And the thing is, like, I actually came to the decision to try the fasting because I wasn't hungry when I was making my kiddo breakfast at 6 a.m.
There you go.
Like that. So for me, that was tuning into my hunger. And so I feel like people freak out when you're like, fasting sounds so much harder than it actually is. But then there's just this cultural expectation. Like, you say you're going to skip breakfast, and we've been conditioned, like, breakfast is the most important meal. Like, I could go on.
Yeah. And the thing is too, I too was part of some intuitive eating groups, and same with me. I just felt that the current was very anti-intermittent fasting, so I just excused myself from the group. However, I could have used my horn. I teach a car analogy. I could have used my horn and said, guys, I have been teaching intuitive eating for 27 years, and I've been teaching people to listen to when they're physically hungry. And I could honestly say that the perfect eating window for a lot of people would be between 7 and 8 hours, intuitively.
Yeah.
Not even like, this is intermittent fasting. What we found is, because remember, when I'm working with people, I'm not talking about just eating. I'm talking about fueling all their tanks. That's how the Dream and Drive diet program came to pass. Because diet in my program means, do I enjoy this? So not only do I enjoy this food, would my body enjoy eating right now? Would my body enjoy how I will feel after I eat this food? But do I enjoy this aspect of my life? Do I enjoy this career? So when I was really getting down to the nitty gritty of all this stuff with my patients, that 7 to 8 hour window was perfect because they were fueling their tanks in other areas of their life.
Sure.
So they didn't need to eat over their problems. They didn't need to sleep over their problems. They didn't need to live over their problems. They were dealing with it. So I'll tell you what, teaching the Dream and Drive diet program, some people love it and some people are challenged by it because they don't want to create a life they love. They're afraid. They have backseat drivers in their life. They're afraid to use their horn. They have junk in their trunk. So that's why I teach this program using a car analogy concept, because everybody knows how to use a car. I teach them how to put their goals in the windshield, keep their past in the rearview mirror, use their horn to communicate, balance their wheel of life, right? So
yeah.
I think that's why I couldn't find another program that did intuitive eating and personal development.
Yeah. And so the thing with the book, I've been waiting to read the bulk of the book when we start the book study group, in the private Facebook group. But like, I like that in, I think, chapter 1, you help people sort of figure out what food plan, if you will, or what eating window is really suited for them. And if I recall correctly, like, you actually have options that are just purely intuitive.
Yes.
Not intermittent fasting at all.
Right.
And so what would it look like if somebody were interested in learning more about your book but didn't want to do the fasting part?
I have 4 options, 4 roads, if you will, to take when you're doing the Dream and Drive diet. And one of the options is called Easy Street. And I say it's not really easy, but it's all about intuitive eating. So it's asking you to pay attention to your hunger. It teaches about having all 4 fuel tanks and how to fuel each tank, how to recognize when each tank needs to be filled, etc. But yeah, I think also that what is built into my program is, even though you're doing an intermittent fasting schedule on most of them, there's always one day that's a free day. And why I do that is so that you can hone your intuitive eating skills doing an intermittent fasting lifestyle to see if you want to switch up your window.
Yeah, I'll be honest, like, when I read that in your program about like having a day that's a free day, it scares me.
Oh yeah, it does. It certainly does.
And I'm not sure, like, that's going to be an area that I need to look at, because it's so much easier to have the rules.
It is, but guess what happens? So I teach a lot about food intolerances, and I right now, like to this day, I still coach people over the phone. So I had two women who are married down in Provincetown. They're friends of mine that are going through this, and they're so cute because they're total opposites. So I was on the phone with them the other day, and they were talking about their free day, and what they're noticing is they allow different foods on that free day that they wouldn't allow on their intermittent fasting schedule. And now they're really honing into how food's making them feel. Does that make sense? Because on that free day, it's a mindset change. Like you said, you're already getting nervous about it. But on that free day, they're like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm not even hungry until blah, blah, blah time, 1:00. But maybe they open their window at 4. And they're like, okay, so I'm not hungry till 1. I'm not going to eat till 1. It's a free day. I'm going to have this particular food. They're like, I don't even like this food anymore. But it's almost like that free day is our learning day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I really struggle with knowing what physical hunger feels like. And so this idea of a free day where I could really eat whenever I want, like normally I've been sort of, with some of the guidance in the Facebook group, I've been sort of loosely following like a 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. window. And I do that so that I bypass my emotional eating tendencies at lunchtime at work. And then I close my window after my son is in bed, so that I can have dinner with my family. So that's been my window. But I miss breakfast in the mornings, right? Like I miss my dippy eggs with toast. And like, I don't know though, if I were to tune into my physical hunger, like right now, I could totally go downstairs and make myself eggs and toast.
But would you enjoy it, and would your body enjoy it?
And see, I think that's where it's tricky, because like, I think I would enjoy it because I've been missing that sort of, that meal. But I don't know if it's physical hunger or if it's, I don't know, like how do you teach people to tune into that nuance of hunger? Like that's
for me, I teach people that hunger is a feeling in your body, but in your mind. So in other words, I think that true hunger can be felt when you're doing other things. Okay, so like if I'm in my office and I'm working with patients and I come upstairs and I'm having a reprieve at 1:00, I might feel mental hunger, like, oh, something would feel good right now. But while I'm downstairs at my 2:00 patient, having not ate, I'm not getting a hunger signal. A hunger signal will come when you're reading a magazine and your mind goes back to food. While you're working with somebody or you're doing your job and your mind goes back to food. It keeps going back to food. So your mind keeps going back to food. Your mind keeps coming back to food. Because hunger comes from the hypothalamus in your brain. So it's actually a signal from your brain. And most people feel like hunger is in your body. I mean, we can feel it in our body. Some people will get shakes. They'll get lightheaded. They'll have symptoms in your body. But really, hunger happens when you're doing other things and your attention is brought to food. Does that make sense?
It does. And it almost sounds like what you're describing is more like when my thoughts are turning over and over and over to food.
That's it.
That's probably more indicative of me being actually hungry than just the grumbles in the stomach.
Right. Absolutely. Because grumbles in the stomach, as a physician, when I have somebody come in and we check their small intestines and large intestines, we're listening with our stethoscope to clicks and gurgles to know that their intestines are working properly. It doesn't mean they're hungry. They're always clicking and gurgling. Sometimes you can feel them, sometimes you can't.
Yeah. So this is awesome, and I'm really, really looking forward to exploring this, your process, and learning from you in this book study. So I want to just shift gears, and I know that you and I haven't really worked out all the specifics, but I kind of want to just sort of brainstorm on the fly. And I want to give anyone who's listening just a smidge of background information. So I created this Facebook group, the Intuitively Intermittent Facebook group, where we're really providing support to people on their intuitive eating and intermittent fasting journeys. Although honestly, like somebody doesn't need to be doing IF to be, get something out of our group, which is awesome. And then I had come across you in another Facebook group, and I reached out to you and asked you if you were interested in joining my group, and you just were so enthusiastic. And so I invited you into the group, and then I found out, hey, you've got this book. And I'm like, what if I set up a Facebook group where we could actually dig into your book and read through it as a group, not like reading as a group, but like studying it and like discussing it and really sort of processing it in a group setting. But we're all from so many different areas. Like, you live in the Cape Cod area, I'm in Philadelphia. Like, meeting in person would just not be feasible. So I'm like, let's do a virtual book study. And you were just really excited about that. And so, I mean, the content in this group, so we're starting the group's book study on Sunday, July 8th, and this is 2018. And the intention right now, based on our conversations, is that we're going to have 6 weeks where the discussion will be live and active in that group. And it's just a discussion. I'm thinking it's just a discussion-based group. Like, we can discuss if you think you want to do like some Facebook lives or something within that group. But people participating aren't going to need to be showing up at a specific time. Like,
No.
it's really going to be about the discussion, which I'm really looking forward